You are live.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a meeting of the Franklin School Board. This is a budget work session meeting. The meeting's being held at the Franklin High School cafeteria on March 8th, 2022, and this meeting's been called to order at 6:06. The Franklin School Board does have a non-public at 5:45 and came out at 6 o'clock. So this is now a public meeting. Before we start this meeting, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of Superintendent Legallo for Judy Everett to become the new Franklin Middle School principal. Second by Paul. Is there any discussion? Ginny, if you'd just like to introduce yourself to everybody. I already know you, but if...
Yes, you do. Hi, everyone. My name is Judy Everett. Oh, you. Am I like not in the right spot?
Oh, you're far away.
I see the director.
You're very far away.
Making notions. Is that better?
You're
Can
good.
we be like really
You're fine.
front center? I'll do it.
Hey, Ginny,
Yeah.
that's part of the job. No, doing the camera.
Oh, you want me to be behind it?
Yeah.
That could be really funny, yeah. You probably don't want that. We'll have to find somebody else. I'm Judy Everett. I was a former teacher, ELA coordinator, and curriculum director here at Franklin. I took a slight sabbatical at another school to learn the ropes of elementary education and building leadership. And I saw the advertisements come up for this year's openings back in the Franklin district, and I was thrilled to come down and have an interview, and even more thrilled when Dan called me and said, hey, how would you like to come to be a principal of the middle school? I live in Samberton. I actually grew up, between Maryland and West Franklin, and then my family moved back to Samberton in 2012, I think. No, 2008, sorry. That was when I started, yeah, never mind. So I was here from 2008 until 2016, and now I'll be back. Anybody have questions for me? Concerns?
Go ahead, Debbie, you have a question.
What's your educational philosophy?
Children first.
There you go.
Children are the center of everything. That's why we're here. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I can expound. It's definitely. Yes.
Hi. Just a question.
Yes.
We've had marginal, if that good, student performance over the last few years. What's your approach to improving that?
Improving relationships with students first and foremost, so students are in a place where they feel accepted and safe, because until we have those relationships with students, there's no way to have them open their hearts and their brains to learn. So that's it. It's the relationship that they have with everybody in the building. But specifically with classroom teachers and their instructors, I think that my relationship with students is very important. I need to be an approachable, honest, warm, helping adult who's there to help students, not to scare them.
Follow-up question.
Yep.
Given that the students, let's assume, do have a good relationship, and I don't know that for a fact, what are you going to do on the read, write, and the academic side of things?
Well, I think the first thing that I will do is have conversations with the teachers. We'll look at the curriculum. We'll look at the curricular supports. I'll meet with Mrs. Finley and talk about how things are going from her perspective on vertical alignment. We look at test scores. Teachers, I know when I left the district, the teachers in the middle school were regularly working with data. They were looking at the test scores. They were looking at the assessments. They were looking at the competencies, and setting small short-term goals, whether they were weekly or bi-weekly, and that's really how you affect change. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and everyone needs to be on board and having those courageous conversations. Teachers need to look at their practice, because one set of students is not going to be like the next.
Are there any other questions for Jenny? All right, a motion's been made, it's been seconded. All those in favor of supporting this recommendation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Congratulations, and thank you very much, and welcome aboard.
Thank you, guys, I'm really excited.
And now I will exit stage left and leave you all to vote.
Good job, Judy.
You don't want to dive
You're
into
welcome.
that? Mostly because I have another class I have to attend, so.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, guys. See you shortly.
All right, we're going to continue with me because Jefferson can lead some of this. It's budget. So tonight's session is our 2022-2023 budget work session. And I am going to turn it over to Jefferson to go ahead and start discussing and going over the budget with all of us.
Sure. Everybody got their coffee?
Coffee or coffee?
Coffee.
Both.
Enough to keep you awake.
Both.
So what I'll do is I'll start off with revenue, since that's typically our biggest benchmark control of our budget. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to look through all the documents in the Google Drive folder. But I'll go down through the revenue projections and how I came to the numbers that I populated there. The revenue sheet shows what we received for last year, what we have budgeted for this year, and what we are estimating for next year. If you start at the top of the form, for the revenues, we have revenues from state sources. First one is special education aid, which is formerly called catastrophic aid. Special education aid is based off of prior year expenses for out-of-district tuition costs. There's a formula from the state on how to determine your entitlement for that. Is based off of 3 times the state average. Anything above that, which is around $55,000, and ceilings out to $150,000, the state will reimburse the district the subsequent year for those costs. As you see, last year we received $152,885. I budgeted $122,295 for this year. We actually received quite a bit more of that. Obviously, that means we spent a lot more last year on out-of-district costs, and we had received about $191,000 this year. But so I upped my projection for next year to $145,000. The state is not consistent with what they will give us. It always depends on a lot of variables, but we don't really know until they actually give us the number how much they're going to give us, because they never give us 100% of our entitlement. Typically, when I work with the DRA, they give us a basement line of about 62% of the entitlement, up to about 75%. Typically, we can budget in that range anywhere we would like to. So I've determined that $145,000 was a safe number to project at this point. Charter school aid is the next line. That is based off of the daily membership or attendance for special education children at the charter school, Compass Charter Academy. We received $39,600 last year for that. It's not based on what we spend for services. It's based on actual head count and attendance to the school. And I think it's about $1,850 that we received per child. This year we actually received over $55,000. I had projected $30,000 this year, but I upped it to $45,000 for next year. Vocational transportation aid is a number that actually Hewitt Center and Winnisquam Ag would submit to the state with their semester reports based on the tuition costs, and there's a flat rate for transportation costs. It's not based on what we spend, it's just a flat amount per distance. And we received about $51.22 last year, and I think about the same amount for this year, so $5,000 is a safe number for that. Adequate education grant, that's the adequacy aid number. That's the number we receive from the DOE for an estimate for next year. We won't actually know that true number until October 1st of next year. Again, there's many variables in that formula. A base adequacy aid number plus free and reduced numbers, English language learner numbers, ADM account, special education ADM count, and so forth. So the number that we have been projected for next year is $8,433,990. And as I said again, we won't know for certain until October 1st, but that's well after the budget process. So you'd like to use the estimate on that. Building aid, that's based off of construction that we've done in the past and a loan that we currently have in place that we have been paying on for the last several years, and we have several more years, I believe until 2028, until that loan is paid off. But during that entire time, we will be receiving $81,944 for that cost for every single year from here on out.
Building aid, the actual, you show 181,944, and that was 181,944.
Right.
Is there an
Because
error?
we had two loans, one retired that year, so it's all done. So that $100,000 dropped off. Indirect costs are the administration cost, which is based off of a percentage that the DOE calculates from our DOE 25. On the grants that we administer for the district, we are allowed to charge a percentage on top of that. The expenses that we spend during the year. For example, this year it's 3%, last year it was 3.1%. And so about on the amount of money that we end up spending through federal grants, we will be able to get, or state grants too, percentage to apply for that for revenue. Especially with the ESSER grants, 69,000 is a safe number. Medicaid reimbursement, now we go down to revenue from federal sources. So Medicaid reimbursement is, again, that's related to special education costs that we spend for eligible services that we provide, like speech, occupational therapy, some behavioral supports. I'm not sure of all of the components that are now allowable. They've changed the rules quite a bit over the last couple of years. It's been very frustrating because I think the second year I was here, or the first year I was here, we made over $300,000 in Medicaid, but then they changed the rules in August, and a lot of the stuff that we were being able to claim was no longer eligible, so we've dropped our estimates significantly. Last year we received about $163,000. I projected $175,000 for this year. We are still starting to pick up on receiving monies. We've only received about $27,000 so far this year, but it's been some checks, big checks that have started to pop in as of late. I did reduce the projection for next year just based on experiential information, but it's tough to predict what will become eligible or be eligible.
Do we look like we're going to wind up getting at least close to our projections for the current year?
It's hard to say at this point. It's just a matter of the process that we're going through. We typically get a lot of our funding towards the end of the year, and I usually record any money that we receive up through the middle of August as revenue in the current year. So, because I don't typically close my books until the middle of August, and all the revenue that we receive up until that time is always based on prior expenses. So, and they always have a full year look back on all of your expenses to be able to determine how much you will get reimbursed for. E-rate funding is related to what they call the Universal Service Administrative Company, which is a part of the FCC, and this is based off of our costs related to internet service that we provide for the district. And we have a third-party administrator that will submit our invoices. We submit them to this company every quarter, and then they will submit it to the USAC, and they give us money based on our free and reduced percentage that we would get reimbursed from the federal government for those costs. Tuition, obviously I have no budget projection on the tuition there. I put it to 0 this year. That's because we had a student right now that currently is attending our district from another school district. And we get paid by that district for have that child here, but the child is anticipated to graduate this year, so we won't have that as a certainty next year. Earning on investments, just interest in our bank account, $2,500 I projected for that. Interest is kind of pitiful lately, but I'm sure the Federal Reserve will jack up their prices, so the banks should start giving us a bit more money on the money we have in the bank. Other local revenue are just small pieces of things that might come in, like a refund of prior year expenses or FSA forfeits. Sometimes some staff members have jury duty, so we get reimbursed from them because we will pay them while they do their jury duty, so any money they receive, they give back to us. Insurance premium holidays, so this is money we receive from our insurance providers, Primex, who handles all of our property liability, work comp, and unemployment. They will typically give us a premium holiday. Also school care and health trust. What they do is their insurance pools, so they collect a bunch of money from all of their members. Based on state law, they're only allowed to maintain a threshold in the pool above and beyond the money they collect, and any excess they have to return to all the members. This $105,685 I have projected is an actual number that I know we're going to get back from information I've received from Primex and from school care. Health trust, I don't know. They don't usually let us know until the fall of the year that we receive it, so it'll be after the budget projection. We would most likely receive a bit more money, but I don't know what that number is going to be, so I don't put it in the budget.
What was last year's number from Health Trust?
It was about $45,000. Yep. Athletic receipts are just gate receipts from athletic events during the year, football, basketball, and whatever else that goes on with the athletic department. New Hampshire Charitable Foundation we haven't received any money this year or next year, so we're not projecting any money there. And then I projected the unreserved fund balance for this year of $850,000. Next section, you'll see the district appropriation and the education tax. The district appropriation is the local tax that will be raised on your local tax bill. This is a number that I have received from the city manager and the finance director over at the city. As you see, it is up 7.71%. The tax cap formula that is used is based off of the CPI. The CPI was 7% for calendar year 2021 ending in December. And they've made some other adjustments in the meantime on that. This is a bottom number. We could end up with more because they're still calculating out things like pickups and other tax considerations that we won't know until April. The next piece is the education tax, which is the statewide education property tax, which is set by the state. This is based off of, they raised or have been raising up until next year, $363 million statewide, and it is based off of a set tax rate, which is recalculated every year. For FY23, part of legislation, they dropped $100 million from that, so they're only going to be collecting $263 million. So as you can see, from this year, we are receiving 1.971. Next year, we're receiving $304,887 less. It's going to give us $886,084. This is based off of a tax rate of $1.20 per thousand. If they hadn't changed that and the legislation hadn't been changed, the tax rate would have been $1.70 per thousand. So that would be the difference. We actually would have received originally $1.224 million next year, if that formula hadn't been changed. Now, the thing about that, though, we're not actually losing money because of it. The way the adequacy aid formula is calculated. It includes statewide education property tax. But because the way the formula is written, it is now changing where the money is coming from. You typically have what is raised by statewide education property tax, which you see a direct cost on your tax bill, and then the other pieces like the rest of the adequacy aid formula comes from the education trust fund. What really just happened is when they cut that $100 million is, yes, on your tax bill, it's going to be lower on that side, but that difference is being made up by the education trust fund. So they're changing the bucket of money that we're getting it from. So that's why our adequacy aid number is where it is for this budget projection for the next year. So even though it looks like we're down $305,000 on that, the adequacy aid number above is making up for that difference. The only other pieces, that's the general fund, and then you get down to the food service transfers. Is a projection of revenues of $600,000. We've had some pretty significant revenue over the last couple of years, but it's still uncertain what's going to happen between this year and next year. Right now we have a bunch of USDA waivers in place. We've been running the food service program all 12 months. So we've been receiving revenue all 12 months during COVID. Now, prior to COVID, we were only doing school year. We do not know what is happening next year, so I was still being conservative in our projection. You can see last year we made $715,000. I even expect this year to be even more on food service, but I don't know, and we don't know at this point, if the federal government is going to continue the waivers into next year and allow us to continue to provide meals 100% free to all students within the district. So I'm going with a semi-conservative number for what I anticipate for revenue projection there. For food service, with that uncertainty at hand, I'm also working with the food service director to look at other options because we might still want to continue running a food service program during the summer regardless of what the USDA offers, because there are options that we can put into place, something called the seamless summer option. We've had discussions with the rec center and other community centers that we have been providing food for in the past during the summer months. They want to continue that if we are willing to do that, and our food service department certainly is willing to do that. So we will be investigating that as we move forward. And I total that up for general food and food service revenues of $16,386,377, which is down just about $71,000 from this year overall. And the next two pieces are the grant funds. And if you saw in some of there's a district-wide report in our budget reports that lists out all the grants that I project funding sources from. The biggest difference right now is why it looks like it's down $329,000. The biggest chunk of that is $250,000 related to a portion of a graduate grant. I don't know if we're going to get that for next year. That's an uncertainty, so I didn't put it in the budget projection. So that's primarily why. And I use rough numbers because I don't know what the grants are going to give us next year. They don't give us that information well until May or even later. Actually, they were very late this year in letting us know what our allocations were on all these grants. So I have to make guesstimates on what we're going to get for each grant. And that can be delved in further in some of the budget reports. And then below that, because we have now all this ESSER funding, I'm projecting $1.3 million to support our school operations for next year, which brings us to a total of $19,086,377 for total revenues.
Are there any revenue questions? David?
You said the education tax is down, but it's a calculation kind of a thing. They've got it somewhere else. Where is somewhere else?
So you have two buckets of money that we would get for state funding for our education. You have what comes out of the Education Trust Fund, and then you have what comes from statewide education property tax. The way the formula is written for the adequacy aid formula is the reduction in the statewide education property tax increases what's taken from the Education Trust Fund. So that's where we're making that up.
Where here on this sheet?
Well, so you have,
District portion is what, I think what he's referring to is where is it, where would he find that number included in?
Yeah.
the 304,000 difference,
Yeah.
it's included in the 8,433,990 at the top of the revenue page,
Gotcha.
under the adequate education grant fees. And obviously, it only shows a $165,000 increase from what we're receiving from this year, but that's because the formula is based on ADM. So this DOE does a projection of our ADM based on our October numbers that we submit to them. But they don't use that number when they actually give us the final number. It's not until this school year ends that they have that solid number to be able to calculate what we will truly receive next year, but we won't know that till October 1st, and obviously our budget process is done at that point, so we have to go with the best estimate at that point. And it could end up even being higher, which it did happen this year, because our enrollment actually increased during the year, and we had a higher ADM than what was originally occurred at the beginning of the year last year, so keep our fingers crossed on that.
Are there any, Deb?
I got two questions. The athletic receipts, is there a reason why it's included in the budget and not dumped into the activities account?
That's just been historical.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly. Can't give you a definite answer on that. It's just been that process and procedure since I've been here. So.
And the second question is regarding food service. Do you know how many dollars in revenues that we have received to date?
Yep. We have received. Screen stinks here. $531,756, and I believe that is only through January at this point. We haven't posted the February numbers yet. So we got February, March, April, May, June still to see that in the report.
Because your estimated budget was for this current year's 535, and you're already almost there.
Yeah, well, again, that's because last year when we were making the budget,
Right.
we didn't know the
Yeah.
USDA was going to be continuing the
Sure,
waiver. So
yeah, I
wasn't
understand
gonna
that.
get carried away with over-projecting.
Right, yeah,
But our expenses are higher too.
yeah.
That's the flip side of it is because we are operating 12 months, we project typically on a 10-month, but we're now operating for 12 months, so our costs are definitely higher. But
Plus the cost of goods are
supply chain
soaring.
issues, yeah.
It's
Brenda has
soaring.
been telling me stories every other day practically about she tries to order stuff and find that there's nothing available and she has to find substitutions and things like that. It's been kind of a frustrating process, as I'm sure many people will recognize with going to the grocery store and finding the things they don't like, can't get it. We're dealing with the same stuff with our food service program, so.
Do we have any other revenue questions for Jefferson? All right, seeing none, thank you, Jefferson. Dan, do you want to go
Yeah,
to
so
the next portion?
the next piece we're gonna look at, the next page in your packet, is the projected enrollment at the Paul Smith School. So Sue has put this together for us, as she always has done, to give us an idea of the number of teachers that we will need and the class sizes that we're trying to have. So if you look at the 23 projections, kindergarten, we are looking at projecting 65 students. Class sizes would be about 15 to 16, and that would be about 4 teachers with a 1-to-15 ratio. There's a combination K-1 class that has first graders and kindergarten students in it. That usually takes up 1 teacher. Obviously, we know a lot more when we bring the kindergartners in for registration. Then you look at first grade, we anticipate about 72 first graders. We expect to have 4 teachers for those first grade classrooms. That would be a 1-to-16 ratio. Second grade, 73 students, 4 teachers, 1-to-18. In third grade, approximately 70 students, 4 teachers, 1 to 18. You can look at our current enrollment as of January 18th there. And she has some average enrollments as well. So with the projections and the current teaching staff, we would need no new classroom positions to make these things happen. The obvious thing we're trying to do is keep class sizes as small as we can so we can make up, especially with our third graders and second graders, for learning loss in the last 2 years. That's one of the approaches we can take to address kids' issues with reading, writing, and math, to try to give them more personal attention from their teachers. The new positions we are proposing at the elementary school are a reading specialist, and this actually would be a district-wide reading specialist after meeting with the Finance Committee. We're looking at funding a district-wide reading specialist to work at all 3 schools. And we're looking to fund a library media specialist, because right now we have a support staff member as a media specialist there. She has gained her certification as an actual media specialist, and we should treat her as such. So we will, we are proposing that we make that a library media specialist position, a professional position, and pay her accordingly. And then she's got a list of a couple of stipended positions that she has in the budget as well.
Based on what Superintendent Legallo has spoken about on the projection enrollment for Paul Smith School for fiscal year 23, is there any questions for the superintendent?
The enrollment for all our schools will increase next September because of less COVID, less mask, and less BS. So the enrollments will increase. Over a 5-year projection, they'll decrease by 10%, but next fall, they'll increase by 2 to 3%.
We always, Sue and I have these conversations every June and July, and into August. We always are monitoring this all summer long to see, do we need to make any last minute adjustments in terms of, you know, shifting a teacher from kindergarten to first or first to kindergarten, or do we need to hire someone at the last minute because our numbers spike? I'll miss having those conversations with Sue this year. But I might call her up and say, guess what, Sue? It happened again. But yeah, those are things we monitor, Paul, all throughout the summer as well. So, you know, any insights you have, send them my way, because, you know, this is not an exact science trying to predict where the kids are coming from.
You say you predict 2.5 to 3% increase in enrollment. Research I've done in else places, that is the projection that they're looking at. That's the projection that I'm putting forth to those that have asked for my reviews.
Are there any other questions for Delaney?
Any further thoughts on preschool expansion?
I'm glad you brought it up. So preschool we've been talking about for quite a while. This year we made the move to include some typically developing students with our special education students. And we have right now the one big classroom that houses all of our preschool students with about 22, 23 kids, maybe 24 at this point, Sue, I think. The last report I saw. The goal that we've had together with the board is to try to expand that preschool program so we can have more typically developing students come in. The problem we're running into is space at the school. The Paul Smith School is filled to the gills. So when I met with the Finance Committee, I said to them that we should probably wait 1 more year based on the current enrollments that we have and the room usage that we have to see whether or not adding another preschool program with another preschool classroom would be something that we can do at the Paul Smith School or not. So I am not moving or recommending that we increase and add an additional preschool classroom this year, based primarily on room usage at this point. But it's a issue or a thing that we need to continue to discuss because it's something we need to do. Because if we want to improve our kids' performance, we need to hit them all early, as early as we can, and help them prepare for school. So the sooner we can get our 3- and 4-year-olds, as many of them as possible, into school, the better off we are going to be. We talked a little bit about other locations for preschools. We talked about partnering with some of the local daycares. Those conversations will continue. But at this point, there is not in the budget a third preschool teacher to expand the preschool. Are there any, Deb?
Dan, on the new position for the reading specialist, you said it's going to be district-wide. Is that a certified teacher position, or is it an administrative position?
That is a teacher position.
Okay.
It would be in the bargaining unit, and it's a certified teaching district-wide reading specialist. There is a critical shortage for district-wide reading specialists. So my hope is to go through this process with you, and once it's approved, to put it out there and hope that we can actually find a qualified person to do that. We have covered it in various ways in the past, but it's clear that we need to have someone with that expertise to help lead our improvement efforts.
Is there anybody within the building that is certifiable, and I don't mean that disrespectful, to be a reading specialist? Because I know there is a specific certification for that.
Yeah, it's a specific certification, and we have several options, potentially in district. But certainly we would want to look, cast a wide net to see what kind of applicants we could get to come in.
So
we do have some possible candidates.
But not certified as of this moment.
I do believe we have one certified reading specialist in the district who's in a teaching position.
Okay.
That helps.
Are there any other questions on Paul Smith?
It might not be specific to Paul Smith, but could you give a quick synopsis of positions that we had open this year that we were unable to fill?
Yes, so we tried to hire a middle school woodshop teacher, and we didn't get any applicants. So when we shifted to changing that to a health teacher, and then we got an emergency certification for a teacher to actually hire a health teacher. So that was the shift that we made. We tried to hire some more special education teachers, and we ended up having to do some contracting, I think, Rebecca, with one of them, right? We had to contract out. We always have to contract out speech and language pathologists and OT services because you just can't find a lot of those people, although we did find one speech and language pathologist, which was a big gain for our district. It took us until November, Ken, to fill your open language arts teaching position, I think.
Yep.
So that we had someone duly certified that was covering that at the beginning of the school year until we actually found someone for that position. We currently are lacking a physical science teacher at the high school. I don't know, Carrie has been doing some interviewing, so we're hopeful there, trying to find a certified candidate. Let's see, phys ed we struggled with for the first month of the school year at the high school until we brought in a certified candidate. What am I missing, principals?
Title I.
Title I, we had Title I position at the middle school open all year that we had no applicants for.
Out-of-district coordinator.
Out-of-district coordinator was budgeted, which is a special education position that works closely with Rebecca. We didn't fill that position, and we actually are reducing that position for next year. We've survived without it. We're going to cut it from the budget for next year. Thank you, Rebecca. And then paraprofessional positions have been unfilled at all three schools, as they have been across the country. That's not a Franklin issue, it's a worker shortage issue, but paraprofessionals, trying to find paraprofessionals is very difficult right now. Any other position? Say it again?
Maintenance position.
We have a maintenance position that's currently open to work under Dan Clark. That's been open for several months now, longer than that, actually, maybe 4 months, 5 months.
Are you looking at maybe 8 or 10 positions that are budgeted for that weren't filled,
Yes,
weren't
and-
occupied in the last year?
Yeah, and the same could happen as we head into this budget. So having these in the budget does not guarantee that we will have these. We have to find the right people and hope that we can get them to come on board.
What area for the Title I is it, math or reading?
Was it math or reading?
Reading.
Reading.
Any other questions? All right, we're going to move on now to your next page. It should be your middle school enrollment and staffing projections for 2022, 2023, please.
So you have a similar graphic here of the middle school, grades 4 through 8. You can see the 2021 enrollments, the current 21-22 enrollments, and then the projections for 22-23. Remember that we have multi-age classrooms in the middle school, so if you look at the projected class sizes that Ken put together below the graph, he has 4 through 6 classrooms. He's got 12 teachers with an average of about 17 students per classroom, the way he's organized. Then he's got his 7-8 classroom with an average of about 21 and a half students. And if you look at the whole building, if you're looking for a whole building-wide average, he's got a class size average of about 18.6. Dave?
Another new guy question. But I look at these, the 4, 5, and 6 number of students, and then 7 and 8 being much larger. That 7 and 8 will eventually graduate into high school. Are we looking at a significant drop then in the number of students in the middle school?
I think it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. Certainly, it looks like the 7th and 8th grade classes are larger, because those numbers are higher.
Well, they'll be going on through.
Yeah, in a couple of years.
4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, it's potentially that's how I would interpret that. We'll have to see if Paul's prediction rings true about kids coming back and whatnot.
Well, of the 88 in grade 8, 25% will not go to the high school. You're looking at the Franklin Middle School enrollment. It says grade 8, 73, 69.
Dave was talking about the middle school.
I was just talking about the middle school population. Looks like it's
I would agree with that analysis at this point. That's why we look at this very closely every year to see where we're at and what we need. And then he's got his allied arts down below that. He's got his 5. We are going to keep the health teacher and keep the health program. And you can see those average class sizes are 20 for the lower grades and 17 for the upper grades.
Are there any questions on the middle school enrollment? Go ahead, Cecile.
I'm just curious, why such a big drop between 2021 and 21-22 in grade 5? Is this people moving?
Well, if you look at it, the next year is in the
Yeah,
next
it
grade.
goes up. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because grade 5 kids became grade 6 kids this year, so that's just
So
the same 80.
56 to 58.
If you look diagonally,
Grade
you'll
4
see
was 56, and grade 5
they
was
just
56.
follow along. That makes sense, Cecile?
You all set, Cecile?
Yep. All right.
Any-
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mark.
All right, we'll move on to the next. Your next page should be your SAU 18 enrollment for January. It should say Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 on the top. That starts out with your total enrollment for Franklin School District at 946 and one from Hill, and I'll let Dan go from there.
Yeah, so this just gives you a sense of the district enrollment Obviously, the high school's different than the other two schools. It's hard to track them in terms of where they're at because they're credit bearing. Although because of the change we've made over the next year or two, we'll be able to track them the same way because we won't use credits to track what grade they're in. We'll use their year in school, so we can track them the same way we do at the middle and elementary school. Right now, as of February 1st, you can see we have 946 in the district. I can tell you the printout I got for March 1st is 940. So that as of March 1st, this is the latest update. I get an update every first of the month from our person that tracks this for me. So we're at a total of 940 in the district.
Any questions on that sheet?
Well, the 940 in the district, 2010 census, 2020 census has the student population, the age of student population in Franklin hasn't really changed, and it's 1,450, and that hasn't changed in 10 years. However, we're showing 940 from enrollment down from whatever.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next sheet. The next sheet you should go to is your Franklin original budget projection amount, total budget, and our budget adjustment. So I'll turn that either over to Dan or Jefferson, or whichever one. You want that, or you want that to Jefferson?
Want me to take it, Jefferson? Okay. So this page, the intent of this page is to give you some transparency about the process we went through to cut things out of the budget, move things from the district budget into the grant funds or ESSER funds, and have you be able to understand a little bit of the decision-making that the administrative team went through the process, painstaking process at times, to make the decisions about what we're going to cut, what we weren't. I'll tell you that the principals and administrators presented their budgets with everything that they wanted, and we were only off by about $360,000, $359,000 this year.
323, actually.
323?
Yep.
Even better, 323,000. So we were in a much better place than we're used to being in, for those of us who've been around for a while. So we can go through this and talk about it. So the first one is the out-of-district coordinator. That's the one I just spoke of that would work closely with Rebecca.
Actually, that's the cost of a student out of district.
I'm sorry, cost of the student out of district. I'm reading the wrong thing here. So we were able to reduce that from the budget. That's why it's in red. So we had Rebecca review the kids that we have out of district and then predict, which is very difficult to do. But I'll remind the board that we do have capital reserve funds for special education if we ever got hit with costly students coming in the district. But we reduced it by $65,000. We took a court placement budget line and reduced it by $75,000, which is just one student typically. We reduced transportation for special education student, $57,600. We reduced transportation students, HOH, I don't remember what that stands for, Jefferson.
Hard of hearing.
Okay, a specific student, $53,100. Middle school.
How much of that is this court place student? Is that some of the trailing funds?
I can't hear you, Dick.
You had a court, you had unanticipated court placement, so you removed a student, and these other costs that you removed, were they associated with that student?
No, different students. Gym fans, we want to redo the gym fans like we did the high school fans, but we're going to move that into ESSER funds, and I believe they've already been approved, Jefferson, by the DOE.
Yes, they have.
So the $13,000 for the gym fans will be paid for out of ESSER. I'll let you take the next one, Jefferson.
Sure.
Or maybe Robin.
That we just, we changed the program, know before it's internet security protocol, right? That we use to test people and make sure people are not downloading viruses and spyware onto our system. So there's programs that we use that we changed from what was called know before, moving to something called CyberHoot, and that's a less expensive program. So we were able to reduce that from the budget. Next off was a high school cafeteria table.
I'll continue.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
that one, I didn't know
Sure.
what that's good for.
Yep.
The high school cafeteria tables, $32,187. We moved that into ESSER and got that approved as well, so we can move on that. Books to support student achievement.
What was that specifically for? What type of books? Does anybody remember?
Carrie, do you remember that?
We had
Carrie, do you know what that one's on for the books?
Yeah,
and boards?
that was for pieces we had ordered for Freshman Academy this past year. We don't need any for next year, we're all set.
Okay.
Yep.
You want to repeat that, please?
It's the books that we ordered for Freshman Academy. And I checked with the teacher, we're all set. We don't need any new ones for this year. Good, yep.
Next one is science chemical disposal. $8,000. When we heard about this, we asked Dan Clark to take care of this this year. We didn't want to leave it until next year, so because we're taking care of it this year, we removed it from the budget.
Excuse me, does that mean it's going to the dance budget?
No, Dan's taking care of the chemicals and
No.
the paint now. He's gonna bring a company in to take it all out of here, and we'll pay for it with this year's money. So we don't need to budget it next year, we're doing it with this year's money. A request was made for a library assistant at the high school, and we had rejected that. We weren't able to provide that. We cut $1,000 worth of supplies for the FACS program for food at the high school. Cut $600 in math supplies for the high school. Science supplies, computer supplies, general supplies, the CAP program and student support room supplies. You can read how much we cut from that. We added solid professor. I'm not sure what that is again. Carrie, do you remember what that was?
That's for the manufacturing.
Yeah, for SolidWorks.
That's for the SolidWorks manufacturing program, thank you.
Is that a software or a software program?
It's online books.
Yeah.
Online text, okay.
And we reduced the PE equipment line by $1,200. We reduced the music equipment line by $22,285.85. That music was reduced because there's still grant money they have available to use, so we're gonna ask them to use their grant money to fund what they were looking for.
But there's still $2,354 in the budget on page 7 for music books.
Yes, we left the books in.
Okay,
We left the books in, but we wanted them to buy the equipment with the grant money.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Force sensor, I don't remember what that was at the high school.
For physical science, yeah.
Physical science, so we reduced that. For the music program, a string vibrator, we cut that. Furniture for the music program, we cut that out. Computer furniture for the computer lab, $26,474, we reduced that from the budget.
Is there a cycle for furniture of that nature?
There is
Throughout
no,
the buildings?
there is no cycle for furniture.
Okay.
Sewing machines, we cut a little bit out of that, 900. Replacement equipment, we cut out 2,000, just a portion of what that was. We're actually gonna replace a couple of ovens in the high school fax room this year before the end of the year. I don't know if you wanna talk about that, Tim?
There's a couple of the stoves that are outdated within the fax room here at the high school. I saw it when I did a tour of the high school recently. I spoke to Mrs. Tibbetts about it. It's time, for the last 5+ years, we've been reducing the fax budget at the high school, and we need to really start getting the equipment necessary for our students that are doing the home economics to have the updated equipment. And 2 stoves are no longer operable. You know, they still work, but they're not what they should be. So I've requested to get those because we have the money this year in our budget. So Dan and Jefferson have both spoken to Judy, and they're gonna work together to find buy 2 new stoves, and it'll come out of this year's budget, so we were able to reduce the $2,000 out of the budget.
Library furniture at the high school, we reduced that by $5,500.
What were they asking for?
Flexible seating,
Yeah,
some more like flexible seating.
Oh, okay.
and tables, I think, too. And then principal printing, travel, and supplies, we added $2,750 at the high school to be consistent with all 3 schools. For the math department, we cut 11 graphing calculators for $1,500. I'm sorry, that was at the middle school. Middle school, thank you, Ken. And then at the middle school, we cut $750 worth of scales for the science department, $1,800, $1,400 worth of English books, $1,000 worth of social studies magazines, Nearpod Premium, which I believe is a software program. Rob, if you maybe speak to that.
We offer a different program, so there was no need to have that.
Yeah, we should pair that now.
Yes, we have Paraprofessional.
And then the Zern, Reflex Math, Frax, and Dreambox are all software programs that we moved into the Title I grant, so we didn't need to use district funds. Those are all Title I eligible. Then we cut Brain Pop from the middle school, which is another software program. A little bit out of teachers, pay teachers at the middle school.
Dan, is that brain pop not being utilized anymore? Is that why it was deducted?
I think they
It's
moved
actually on
it.
the list of ESSER.
I think it got moved, yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're actually gonna use.
so it should have been to ESSER, we just didn't have it on the sheet.
Oh, okay, so it's not, that
So we
goes
moved
to
that to ESSER, I thought so. Title I was looking for new furniture, we cut that, $1,723.88. Laminator repair, we cut that out because we're gonna buy a new one, we put that in the budget for the middle school. Art supplies at Paul Smith, we reduced by $18.76. The next 6 items at the elementary school, we moved into the Title I grant. So Zern workbooks, Reader's workbooks, Fontes and Pinell reading, Math Seeds reading A to Z, all moved into the Title I grant and the Zern licenses. All Title I eligible, so we use the Title I funds to cover it all. We cut the classroom rugs at Paul Smith. We added kinder mats at Paul Smith, so they would have those instead. We cut a whiteboard at Paul Smith. Art furniture of $9,430 got cut. Library furniture at the Paul Smith School was cut, $5,000. And then we have, this is an addition, I believe, of an unanticipated court placement of a student. So that gives you kind of a sense of the kind of what we call nickel and diming back and forth on each of these lines to reduce it down or to offset what we need to offset for those revenues that Jefferson went over. This process took us a month to go through. I want to thank all the administrators for all their time and effort going through and participating in this process. But that's how we got to the final number of $19,086,376.60. The other piece I wanted to share is that in Dan Clark's budget, we were able to And I don't know if you want to speak to this, Dan, but we were able to, I believe, we're going to be purchasing a new tractor. If you want to speak to that, it's in the budget.
The tractor we have now is 2008. I went through it 2 years ago when I first started. The front end of it's pretty well torqued. They welded the front extensions where they broke them off prior, and they didn't weld the squares, so as we're lifting it, going up and down, it's wearing all the bushings out, so we have a lot of play there now, excess play. The front tires are actually wearing on the outside. I'm replacing the seals and bearings approximately once every 6 months. I think what happened was using it to move the snow, whatever coming down hard on the front end, it just tweaked it over the years. Basically, a lot of people using it that didn't have the experience to use it. And when you get 4 or 5 different people on a piece of equipment at different times, it takes a beating, so it's pretty well worn out. We have 1,840 hours on it. When I took over, I don't think the fluid had changed for like 4 years. There's a lot of pieces of metal in the transmission, and I told Jefferson it's going to be a 50-50 chance if it holds out. Thank God it did, but it's getting tired now, so we need to get a new tractor. We use that, do a lot of grading, stuff in the summer on the sports, on the fields. We use it all winter to pile snow and move stuff. So it's something that's needed throughout the year. The other thing I'm looking to replace is one of our mowers. We have 2 of them. One of them, prior to my, was flipped over and it torqued it. I've tried 2 or 3 times, monthly on my free times, trying to get it back into shape, but something's bent, it's throwing the belts off, it's eating the pulleys up, so I want to trade that one in towards a new one. That mower is a 2008 mower with 2,200 hours on it. It's 14 years old. The better one of the 2 we're going to keep as a backup, and that's being used. It looks like it's got 24 hours, so it's approximately 230 hours of mowing in 16.4 weeks a year that mower's being used. And that's used for all 3 schools. We trailer it, they bought a trailer so we can bring it to the Paulsville School, but Jerry's on that most of the summer, keeping the field ready for the sports. And the other thing I'm asking for is a floor machine scrubber for the high school. I rebuilt the high schools 2 years ago. I have the list here. What happened is the acid and stuff from the batteries, it wore up the chassis. The holes were oblong. It wouldn't hold the pads on the floor, so I welded it in spaces and tried to get it the best I could. They oblong again. I checked with the dealership, that part is no longer available. To remove it and have it fabricated, put it back in, it's not worth what the scrubber's worth. And that scrubber, I believe, is let me see, date of birth was 11/09, so it's been here quite a while. And I did purchase all new batteries for it. They built it, like I say, 2 years when I was here, but we replaced the ones at the middle school last year. This year, with that one down, these guys are doing all the floors by hand. So that's definitely needed, and I did find a refurbished one with a 1-year warranty, 100%, and 3-year on the drivetrain for $4,000. So I thought that was pretty good.
David?
You sound like you're doing an excellent job on reverbing a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
That evidently went deferred maintenance or no maintenance. Do you have I'll call it a process sheet or something to inspect all these individual items on a recurring basis so that these kind of problems are caught early rather than, you know, just I saw this and I fixed it?
What I do is, prior to me starting, there was nothing showing what was done. What I've done now is when I do the preventive maintenance and stuff on the trucks, the equipment that we use is written down, calculated, and I give Jefferson the parts that are needed for abuse or parts that are needed for breakdown. We're separating that so we know where the problems lie. So we have that broken down now per section.
Is there some sort of a inspection process for that piece of equipment that is done periodically, logged?
Right, preventive maintenance
Yeah.
sheet that we use.
Yeah.
And that tells us how many hours we do the oil changes, and oil changes, which is broken down to grease lubrication, oil filters, and all that, checking the bearings, checking the tires, checking the pressures. That's all done when we do our preventive maintenance, whether it's on our pickup truck, the little school bus that we use here that they use for the robotics and the ski team. That is a Mercedes drivetrain, and that again, when I got here, it was 4 or 5 years before the oil was even changed in that. So they had nothing. So I am doing preventive maintenance on all of my equipment, and my guys are trained to, the batteries in these electric scrubbers and sweepers have to be charged, and they're deep cycle batteries, so you have to add water. So I bought the canisters that they're supposed to be using to fill the waters up, so they don't fill them too full. Because what happens is they were using a cup, and then after it's charged, it's boiling over, and that's why we have all the acid and stuff on the floor. So that's all been corrected, and all of my employees have been trained on how to put the water in, when to put the water in before charging. So I've knocked down, I started here with 700 and something school dudes, and I'm down to, I think I have 10 on hand right now. And my goal is not to have a school dude last more than 5 days. And with that being said, that's not only me, my custodians are taking what they need to do, my grounds guy is taking what he needs to do, and right now, all of us are filling in for the maintenance person.
You know, I want to speak to that a little bit too. That's one thing, when I came on board, and once Dan obviously came on board too, was tasking, we had found that a lot of the maintenance of a lot of the equipment for the district had not been done properly. So Dan has worked very hard to set up a structured system in place to make sure that stuff is done. My philosophy has been, and Dan certainly knows this too, is that a little bit of money now to maintain the stuff saves us big chunks of money down the road. And prior to us coming on board, that philosophy didn't seem to be in place. So we're recognizing that now and putting in systems to make sure that this stuff is regularly maintained so that we're not spending huge chunks of money later on, other than we're still dealing with the sins of the past, but in certain situations.
I know this is a sensitive question, but the people who were using this equipment before obviously weren't helping to maintain it, but how many of those people are still here?
I don't believe any of them are. I don't know.
None of them?
No.
Okay, that's good.
In the school food program, is there a component for tracking scheduled maintenance?
I didn't hear
In
that.
the school food program, is there a component that you
In
can
the s-
use to schedule
Not-
the maintenance?
Not in the school dudes. I don't schedule maintenance through school dudes. School dudes are used for the teachers and
Teachers,
staff
yeah,
that need
yeah.
repairs in the school.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, toilets that are plugged, sinks that are clogged, leaks and stuff like that. The maintenance schedule is what I keep track of in my office by hour meters or how many miles per the vehicle. I keep track of that myself.
Maybe there's a module that can be added to it that might help you with that.
There actually is one.
I don't know, but yes.
There actually is one. I am not sure how it works, but that's something I can look into and
Yeah,
contact the
'cause
company
that seems like
to
it would give
provide
them-
training possibly on that, because I do believe it is part of the maintenance direct module, but I'm not that familiar because the IT section is different than the maintenance section.
Yeah, the school dudes weren't being used.
I can look into that.
Prior, so that would be a big up now. I'm on school dudes daily.
Yeah.
And
No, I understand. I'm
Yep.
very familiar with school food, but I was just wondering if there would be that extra module that would help you
Yeah,
in your
absolutely.
process of maintaining all these components at a
Right.
minimal cost.
Yeah, it may be available, that I'm not positive of. That's something when I get ready to contact the company for renewal, I can find out what is there and what training is available and how we can set something like that up.
Follow up on it at
Yeah.
support meeting.
That's good. And bring it to a finance.
Yes, right, finance. All right, so that's it on the tractor. You've all received, and Dan's gone over your budget adjustments and the number. The adjusted budget balance, as you can see, is $19,086,376.41. Projected revenue projection, it was $19,086,376.60, so we're right there. The last item we need to go over, which Dan will talk about, is where our ESSER funds are going for fiscal year '23, so that should be your next page. ESSER funding grant for fiscal year '23.
So this is a combination of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding. We're heading into year 2. Next year would be year 2 of the funding. We have one more year beyond that with the ESSER funding, plus the summer and the September, so we're moving along with this. So we made a list of all the ESSER funded components of this year's budget. So we've got a classroom teacher at Paul Smith, a behavioral position at Paul Smith, 2 classroom teachers at the middle school, a tech integration specialist, case manager, special education case manager at Paul Smith School, 2 case managers at the high school, a virtual case manager at the middle school, 3 social workers at the 3 schools. Does that include our Office of School Wellness Coordinator?
A portion of that, yes.
A portion of that as well, so that's 3.5 people. Computers that we're going to be buying, $125,000, $125,308. Homework recovery for the high school, $9,300. An assistant to the nurses to help us with what we've been dealing with COVID. Part-time guidance counselor. It's a part-time, more of a social worker than a guidance counselor. Summer school at the high school, $18,574. Teachers pay teachers, $6,500. Discovery Education, which is an online instructional software program. Zoom and Pear Deck, which are both instructional software. Brain Pop, which we talked about. Nurse stipends, public relations stipends, not sure if we're going to need those for next year based on where we're at with COVID. Only time will tell how that looks next fall. The gym fans that we talked about were funded are here, and the high school cafeteria tables are here as well. That totals about $1.4 million. So the thing to be aware of here is that this money is propping up our budget now for the 2nd year in a row. And then 3 years down the road here, or 2.5 years now, this money will be going away, so we need to continue to keep our lens on this to think about how we navigate the next 2+ years, because we don't know in 2024 what it's going to look like, but we know we don't expect any ESSER funds to be there anymore, but we don't know what everything else will look like. So we have to be very strategic, and the Finance Committee and Jefferson and I have talks about this all the time, about how to navigate through this so that we know that we are in a better place at the end than we are at the beginning. Dave, do you have a question?
I asked this question before the city council about a year ago, and you said 2 things. One, the contracts for the additional staff and so on will be 1-year contracts. And I think the negotiations came out with 2 years. Now, maybe they're not they may not be part of that, so, but.
Yeah, that's it. Can I answer that, Dave, just
Yeah.
to clarify for you? So the contracts for professional staff come out every year, individual contracts. The contract we negotiate for the entire union, that's a 2-year contract, but that doesn't mean that teachers get 2-year contracts. Everybody gets a 1-year contract. And then in the next year, we decide whether we're going to keep those teachers or not keep those. So they're 2 separate pieces, just so you know.
And then I asked the question, which was, I think I asked the question that was, what you just alluded to was, how are you going to do this when you're sitting at the cap, the tax cap budget right now, and you've got these people in here who all of a sudden, oh my God, we can't live without them. You know, that's a big question, and how are you going to get through that? I mean,
First of all, it's not how am I gonna do this, it's how we're gonna do this, because we're all on the same team here. And we need to be very strategic about how we proceed from here and over the next couple of years in all the areas that we work together on. You know, and board members can talk about this, but, you know, we don't know what state funding's gonna look like 2 years down the road. We don't know what local funding's gonna look like 2 years down the road. We don't know what our grant funding's gonna look like 2 years down the road. We deal with this uncertainty every year that I've been here, all this uncertainty. So we need to be diligent about looking and saying, as people leave the district, is that an opportunity for us to think about thinning out our budget? An example of that was tonight. We have an out-of-district coordinator position where it goes unfilled. We decide to go without to see if we can survive, and all of a sudden we cut that position out of the budget because we decide to go leaner and meaner. So that has to be the lens that we have and have had for the next 3 years. But the other piece of that is the board needs to engage the community and the city council in recognizing the needs of the district.
I guess my frustration is I look at the performance of the school, and the only performance I see increasing is the budget. And the amount of improvement I see in the students, which is the real reason we have a school, isn't there. And I don't hear anybody talking about what we're doing to improve it other than throwing more people at it. And that's what I don't want to see missing from these discussions.
So are you planning on going to I-2 tomorrow?
I can't.
Because that's where we talk about that stuff, Dave. We talk about it every month at I-2. We talk about all the different strategies we use, all the different things. We have all kinds of discussions about that. But we only have those discussions with the people that are there. I don't know, Delaney, if you want to talk about it, but we've had I-2 working on this for a long, long time.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time the last 2 years and implemented a lot of new strategies, especially over the course of this current school year, to try to address some of these things. It's hard to summarize the angles of the issues that we face here with our school population. I feel like we often start out at a disadvantaged position, and when we start out at a disadvantaged position and we expect better results without making improvements, then we're really, we're just having a circular argument. If you say, well, you're not improving, so we need to not give you more money, then we can't improve. So we're trying to take this opportunity that we have right now, where we have some additional revenues, to implement some strategies and take this baseline that we say we had last year as a low point, implement some new strategies, spend some extra money for the next 2-3 years, and demonstrate improvement. Now, if we spend this money for the next 2 or 3 years and we don't demonstrate improvement, then we have, then we've done something wrong. But if we have this extra money and we don't spend it and we don't try to improve, then I think we will have failed as a board and as a school system. So this is our opportunity right now, to take this money to implement some new strategies and prove that we can improve, prove that the strategies that we're trying to implement can make a difference. If we fail, then fire us all and start over, I guess, you know, but that's our goal.
I understand that, it's like the reading program, and I'm okay, on the reading program should work. It's a fairly intensive phonics program. It should work in improving reading skills and so on. And we should see that by now. So that, you know, you've got some things that are being done. I'm just worried that you're going to end up at the end of 4 years without that improvement. So we need to measure it as we go along.
But and we are, and that's a big focus of the I2 committee right now is making sure that we have those metrics in place, and where we don't have the metrics to build in the metrics to make sure that that what we're doing is working. And your point on the phonics program, we made a major investment to bring that program in, to purchase pallets of books, so the kids have the materials they need to help improve. So this is what we're doing, and like Dan said, I2 is where we talk about this stuff constantly. It's always where it flows through, and then when we come to some conclusions there, it always comes to the full board. But I encourage you to make every effort to get there. I encourage every board member to. I always try to invite every board member to come. We always have a Zoom link. If you can't make it there, or there's too many people, too many board members there, everybody can still attend as members of the public to at least hear what's going on. I'm very liberal in public comment, though I will say in 2 years I still don't think I've actually had public comment, so I'd love to have people show up and have greater input. I spent all of last year without a second board member, Tim notwithstanding, because he comes to all committee meetings. But the more voices we have, the better off we're going to be. I'd love to have more debate. So.
I'm going to touch on it just for a second, please. Dave, one of the things with the I2, okay, is that we've also set a timetable, and there will be updates on a 3 month period coming to the school board from the reading program that we have at the elementary school and middle school. Okay, they're going to come. We had to have a starting point because we all know, and we can debate it if you want, but COVID put us back by 2 years. I don't care what anybody says. COVID put us back by 2 years. We have 2 years of making up that we need to do. So we have to start from a beginning point, and that beginning point is going to be coming tomorrow night, if I am right, of where our reading scores are at the elementary school. Okay. Because we have made a large investment. And then from that point, we're going to have a starting point to what we can grow on over the next 2 to 3 years. But there's going to be reports coming to the board, and those are reports because Superintendent Gallows even told the City Council, and we've been there, when he's told them he will be reporting out to them every 3 months. So, again, like Delaney said, now we have to show what we're doing to bring our kids, and we will bring these kids forward. I firmly and 100% believe it, okay? But there will be reports given out to the school board every 3 months on the progression of our reading in math, I believe, too, right there? Reading and math for both the middle school and the elementary school, and I know even as far as Ken and Jay are doing monthly or weekly, I don't remember how many, forever getting the kids ready for the testing for the state level. So we are going to take steps because we have the accessibility and we have the funds to do it now. And this is how we're going to be able to show the community, to the city council, and to everybody else that these extra fundings in areas that we worked and we focused upon, and these are the results of what we did. So there was going to be things coming to this board and to the city and to the citizens and the parents. So I need to say that to you. Did you have something, Sue? Or did I hit it for you?
So I think, I can't predict the future, but Tim is absolutely right, and I think everyone in this room knows that COVID had a significant impact on our growth and our ability to show our growth. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm here because I want to stand behind you.
Oh, okay.
Stand with
But
me.
I'm going to, we tend to, and please know that this work started with looking at our resources and what we had for resources for our teachers globally that we didn't have. But also it was about the structures that weren't in place. So what you have as a district now, as both Ken and I walk out the door, is a phenomenal educational structure. And I want to say at my school, but at Paul Smith School, it's about trained teachers and staff who focus on the individual needs of the students. And this was reaffirmed for me by Miss Mazzy, who's new to us this year. And she made a comparison between her school that she was at last year and was there for 4 years as a teacher, and coming to Paul Smith School this year. We focus on every individual child. And I can't tell you stories about all 300 kids, but I can tell you that my staff can tell you stories about our 300 kids. And the piece of paper, or the packet of paper that I handed Dan Legallo tonight, is about where our kids walked in the door after 18 months of COVID and the impact of COVID and where they are today. I think the structures and our ability to for a lack of a better phrase, but to data track our kids, to say where they were in September and where they are today in reading, which is defined as their level of reading in Fontes and Pinnell. And you were at Paul Smith School a few years ago, and we talked about it and how excited I was. You should come see the book room now, because it's a whole different, it's in a different place and it's phenomenal. But it's about providing the resources, it's about providing the structure, it's about building a structure between regular ed, supporting children, and special education, and how we built that continuum and how we've trained our teachers. The worst thing we can do as a district, and I'm sorry, I'm on my bandwagon, I'm going to stop in a minute, but is that we put people in places and we expect them to do things and we don't train them. We say, here's what you're going to do, but we don't give them the basic training and support to be able to do that. And that's what's changed in the Franklin School District. And not only did it start at Paul Smith School, but it's traveled all the way to the middle school with the support of administration and of course the SAU, so that we have common language, common structures, common strategies, so that we're not confusing our kids. And our kids are becoming successful. Even in the short time we've had them since we came back, they're successful. So I think, even though, as I've said to Dan Legallo, I won't be here to celebrate with you, but I think what's ahead for the children of Franklin is going to be absolutely phenomenal. I really do.
Thank you, Sue. We'll send it over to Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
I just wanted to say, for context's sake, and I did this presentation for the school board, I think, a year ago, and for the city council a year ago as well. But just to put it into context, we're talking about 2 years of COVID affecting everybody, and yes, it does. But it has disproportionately affected people who have started behind the starting line to begin with. So for anybody who has other traumas that they've experienced in their life, and in Franklin, our children on the YRBS in 2019 reported experiencing of the ACEs. They measure 4 of them. Of those 4 ACEs, adverse childhood experiences that they measure, they had reported experiencing 4 of those at least twice the regional and state average. So we're having kids coming in experiencing twice the amount of trauma as other kids in the surrounding towns, in the region and in the state. We have, one of the highest free and reduced lunch rates back when we were measuring that. Our special ed rate is a little higher than the state average. So if you put all of those things in place, and then, so you take these kids who are struggling to just stay on the ladder, and then you shake them off with COVID, it's gonna take them even longer to get back. And I'm very hopeful right now, because I think that the real work is putting the structures and the systems in place. The people can change, and what curriculum we use, whatever, but the scaffolding and the structure around it is what the work has been going on for the past few years. And I don't think you're gonna see that change and that difference until we have some stability for our students.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
I just wanted to add to that, that with the work that Sue and Ken started in elementary school and middle school, came up to the high school this year, which is why we have Freshman Academy. And we have had improvement at the high school. We reduced the dropout rate even through the pandemic. And the SAT scores have improved as well. And I'm looking forward to see what those different pieces and different measures can be. We talk a lot about our district and our kids who ebb and flow, who come in. And just at the high school this year, we've had a movement of 80 students so far this year coming into us, whether they be juniors or sophomores or leaving and going elsewhere. So there's a lot of movement, and we do have a lot of supports here in Franklin. So being able to see what happens with that money and the different pieces we've put in place, we've already seen progress despite some of the pandemic pieces, and the kids are gravitating towards our schools, and our families are gravitating towards us, and we're very, very busy, especially from the social worker side and our academic side. And the teachers are stepping up and helping them above and beyond, and doing summer school programs and tutoring after school. So there'll be some good results.
Thank you, Carrie.
Well, as we go through the use of the ESSER funds, and after they have run their course and we lose those funds, and Tim had brought a proposal a few years back to the city council on how to bring those numbers up for the school district so that we can stay quite, as level as we possibly can. And that never was discussed at any of the times, and I know of 2, if not 3 times, we've talked about it. And I know that when we have met with the joint finance committee, as a school board in the finance committee, we've also talked about it at that level. But it doesn't seem to go any further than those discussions. The city council has not discussed any long-term plan to help us sustain what we are working on. And when it does work, and that's, after all these structures and things are put in place and we get it, where it should be, we need their support to be able to sustain that funding and not have to cut a position because of that funding.
And you need to be out in the community as a group, campaigning to bust the tax cap.
And it's not just us.
But
the city council needs to do that at their end as well.
They will only do what they know they can get away with. They get away with in the community. They're not going to bust it. You're going to have to convince the people to bust it.
But what about all the other services that are so needed? It should be a joint effort, not just one single-sided.
Unless the city council believes that they can get community support and for something like that, it's not going to happen. And because, you know, it's going to take community effort to convince them what you're saying is true. So you can go to the community and say, we need a 20% increase in taxes. Here's what we're going to spend it on. It's a really good idea. We've got proof of it, and so on. The city council, I got some personal experience, but you have to convince them that they could sell that to the community. They're not going to go sell it to the community unless you're there beside them and have been there before.
No, it's okay. All right. You all set then?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, the last portion is, everybody should have received this. I believe this is, Jefferson, this is what you dumped into our budget.
Yeah, that's just
Okay, so everybody has a copy of it. It was dumped in, it was also put into our budget folders, okay, our school board budget folders. All right? It's 76 pages long, and on the back, if you go to page 76, you can ask questions this after, but I just wanted to just point out a couple of things. No, we're not going to lie about this.
We used to.
Hold on a second. Okay, the superintendent's proposal for the 2022-2023, as you see on the back and on the other forms that have been brought to us tonight, is a budget of $19,086,377.41. This is for a 5th year in a row, a tax cap budget. Okay, the city requires us, as the rest of the department heads, that we have to submit a tax cap budget to the city of Franklin. Okay? And I have made my personal mission over the last 5 years to make sure we have a tax cap budget, because we realize the effects that it can have to try to raise additional funding.
2018.
Excuse me?
2017 and 2018. When we paraded up and down the
The tax
street.
cap budget wasn't presented.
It was 6 years ago. So he said
I
5.
said 5.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so this is a tax cap budget, which is what the city has requested from us. So if there's any questions pertaining to this budget or any motions want to be made, can be made at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget as presented, $19,086,377.41. So moved.
Motion's been made by Deb to approve the budget as presented to us tonight for $19,086,377.41, and that has been seconded by Maureen. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I am going to ask for a roll call vote on this, please.
Maureen O'Bay?
Yes.
Deb Brown? Deb Brown?
Yes.
Delaney Carrier?
Yes.
Cecile Cormier?
Yes.
Paul Doucette?
Yes.
Tim Dow?
Yes.
David Testerman?
Yes.
At this time, the Franklin School budget for 2022-2023 has passed unanimously. Superintendent Legallo, at this time, will forward this budget to the city of Franklin, to the city manager, to be presented to the city council, to be also presented to be added to the city budget. Is there any objections on that? Seeing no objections, you all set with that, Dan?
All set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, in case, and also, just so everybody knows, May 9th?
Earlier than that.
I think it's the 4th.
May 4th is going to be our presentation to the city council. So the city council will have ample opportunity to have seen this tax cap budget and realize that there is a tax cap budget that has been passed by the Franklin School Board. Is there any other items that need to be brought before the Franklin School Board this evening?
Yes.
Okay, go
A
ahead.
couple. Work Camp New England is a group that has been trying to come into Franklin for the last 2 years, come in and do some community service work with residents. And we approved this a couple of years ago before COVID hit. So they're ready to rock and roll this summer. And they want to come in from July 8th to July 23rd, 2 weeks,
They'll stay at the middle school, and we'll house them, and they take care of pretty much everything. We just have to house them and go from there. So I'm looking for the board to just give me the thumbs up that we can finally let them come in and do that community service work that they do.
This was approved at one time by the board, so it's consensus, unless someone disagrees, we are going to allow the superintendent to move forward.
Consensus.
Consensus is good.
Use of funds plan, we got a new DOE template a few weeks ago. Jefferson and I, and Jewel and David Cole worked on that. We just put it into your drive for the March 21st meeting. We are gonna submit it to the DOE tomorrow, since it's due tomorrow, but we will discuss it on March 21st at the meeting. I can tell you it's very difficult to read because of the font, the template they provided. It's not a very user-friendly template, but it's in your drive to take a look at, and it'll be on the agenda for the 21st. And that is the only two items I have.
The only other thing I have is on behalf of the board, I would like to give my sincere thank you to all the administrators for the time that has been spent on this budget. I know that we've had a lot of meetings. I know that this has started in January, at the beginning of January. We had deadlines that needed to be made to get your budget to Dan and Jefferson. And then Dan and Jefferson had timelines to reduce this budget down. And I know it's a very tedious and a very long process, and I don't want it to go unnoticed to you administrators who do a phenomenal job day in and day out for the school district, okay? And I say this sincerely, and I mean it every time I say it, because I feel that we have some of the best administrators in the state, okay? We always have. So on behalf of the board, thank you for what you do. Thank you for the budget you've presented. I know it's not easy doing a tax cap budget, but it is appreciated by this board. And I just want you to know that everything you guys have done to get this budget is very much appreciated by the board, so thank you very much.
Hey, I lied, I do have one more thing. The use of funds, the use of funds plan, we sent out a survey to staff and students and the whole community, and I have the results for the board. So you can look at the results of the community, ideas from the community about how to spend the money, the ESSER funds. So for each board member, I'm gonna give you a hard copy that you can read at your leisure. And the only other thing about the budget we forgot to tell you was that Danny Sylvester's athletic budget was doubled. He has something to show you. Oh, you didn't bring him with you. We'll see if it's next time. I wanted to leave on that.
All right, you all set yet?
I am all set.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. We'll see everybody on the 21st. The lady, I'll see you tomorrow.